Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at the Charger, and I'm going to try to not mispronounce anything in this video, but you know me, I will probably mispronounce a few things. The Charger is a fairly popular machine in some circles, and it's generally the circles of people who like to fight in arenas. It's not a super popular machine on the front, well, at least not during the Succession War. Some of the more modern versions are somewhat popular and are getting quite scary. But it was an odd machine to begin with, and it has a very odd history. It's one of those fun things to look at in battle mech history in general. So let's get into it. When using basic mech technology or second generation mech technology or Succession War mech technology, I mean, there's different ways of looking at it. I like to call it second generation mech technology because it literally is. You have the prototypes and the primitive mech tech from before with the larger engines, the bigger cockpits, and the shittier armor. And, you know, that basic technology that a lot of people look at, the Succession War gear, that's basically the second generation of technology before the various advances the Star League gave to all sorts of people. When you're dealing with a thing like that, you generally have to deal with the general triangle conundrum. Armor, weapon, and speed, pick two. But once you start digging into it, especially in that second generation of mechs, you really come to realize that if you use speed in any of those mixes here, the other two are often not going to be super emphasized, or not emphasized at all, to be quite honest. If you look at things like the Cicada, the Dragon, the Flea, they all have this kind of issue. Well, not all the versions of the Flea, but the ones that are meant to be faster kind of fall in that particular category, and you start seeing the problems that those bring. And you've got the same problem with the Charger, the subject of today's video. The base idea behind the Charger was to build an assault scout, basically a large machine that would be a monster for other scouts to try to stop, and that was able to get behind enemy lines, get the info, and come back. Wealth Technology didn't have access to any of the good stuff, however. They had no ferrofibrous, no endo steel, no XL engine. All of those fancy things were available at large to the Star League powers, but minor companies and smaller groups generally were not able to source the parts that they needed or, you know, get the order in for all the endo steel that they would need for a full production run of a thing like the Charger. They went with what tech they had available to them, and it made a thing. I'm not going to say a good thing. I might even say that it's a bad thing in many situations, but they did a thing that stuck around with that Charger. Another thing that came up is that the people at Wells also didn't think that it would be smart to put most advanced sensors and other equipment or even improved communication equipment in their machine in 2665. Assault scouts were, you know, a theory, so they went with something as basic as possible, and all the parts that were in the machine were basically off-the-shelf, standard Generation 2 battle mech parts. This made it incredibly tough, however, and very easy to work on, but this was unfortunately not a priority at time of release in 2665, where major battles were not going on all the time, and you didn't have any major wars going on. What you had was a lot of garrison work, a lot of anti-pirate work, and some odd border skirmishes that just disappeared once the right people were bribed off. So a thing that was tough, easy to work on, and easy to repair might not have been the best thing for the Star League at the time. The Star League did look at the design, they bought a couple dozen, and then they put a stop-by order because they really didn't need it, and Wells basically had a massive inventory of machines that they were not able to liquidate. It was the, well, I was going to say good people, but it's the DCMS. So it was the DCMS that actually rescued the Charger and Wells Technology from collapse as the first Succession War started to strain supply lines for just about everyone. It was easy to fix outside of that big and expensive engine, but I mean, messing up an engine completely on a battle mech is pretty hard, which meant that the original models could keep on trucking for years, and even by the start of the fourth Succession War, you still had a number of the original Chargers still in service. So they didn't need to build a whole lot more, and the DCMS was happy to just throw money in Wells' direction in order to buy their inventory. The DCMS did start upgrade programs for the Charger around that time as well, during the Fourth Succession War and the lead up to the War of 3039. And this is what led us to things like the Aramoto Chi and a variety of new Charger models with different purposes, at different speeds, different weight classes. Well, not really weight classes. Well, if you're in the arena, maybe different weight classes. It's became a common enough machine and something that was scary enough that if your sensor profile just said Charger, you had to think about what you were going to face and try to get more details on it. It did surprise the good people in the clans a little bit more as well when they showed up on the DCMS border, and they had some Chargers showing up with AC-20s. Wells Technology basically had to fold around that time as well here due to corporate shenanigans, mostly the fact that they were not giving all their dues to the DCMS and, selling stuff to other parties that they were not supposed to. In the end, Lucian Armor Works are the ones who bought Wells Technology out from bankruptcy. You've got more advanced version of the design that were built during the clan invasion and after, using more advanced material, mainly to save on weight and to make it more efficient overall. You also have the people in Ravina, in the Outworlds Alliance, and now Raven Alliance, building new Chargers, even to clan standard up to very recently, and I'll have to say we'll see that machine later, but it is a true monster. I'm not the one that will go into a deep dive of the various pilots of the Charger and just the stupid amount of survivability these things end up having. There are bigger and better historians out there that have covered this, and you probably would want to watch their details on the Charger as well. However, during the Succession War, the Charger was still not a good machine. Don't fall for any of the weird sayings that people say. It wasn't good. 5 small lasers, not that much armor, not super fast. It wasn't fantastic. The one thing it had, though, was damn reliable, and you could basically train pilots to put in them in remarkably short time. Basically, if you have someone that's trained into using agromechs, well, you take them, you put them in a Charger's cockpit, you say, this is the button to turn it on, this is the button to shoot the lasers, and this is the button where you will be able to punch, kick, charge, and whatever you want. The agromech pilot will be able to do that just fine. And, you won't be able to hit the broadside of a barn with small lasers, but what's that really going to do in the grand scheme of things? What you want with a Charger is to get close to someone, throw a nice kick, and take the leg off of a Locust. Wells Technology Original 2665 CGR-1A1 is basically 80 tons of metal meant to club people over the head and really not much else. Most of the mech's weight is composed of the LTV 400 engine that's built in on it, allowing it to get speeds of 86 kilometers per hour, which is not terribly fast, but for a mech that size, well, it is quite decent. The armor plates are from Duralex. It's 10 tons of standard basic plates here. It'll protect the body, which is pretty good, but, it's more than what a normal scout would have. But compared to most assault mechs or even mechs in that particular weight range, it's not fantastic. For weapons, you get a pair of legs, a fist, a barrel fist, because someone made a mistake and didn't put a hand on the other one. And, you've got 5 Magnum Mark I small lasers, which are very good small lasers, don't get me wrong here. But they're not going to be your main source of damage. They are spread throughout the body, however, which is a fairly smart thing to do because if you lose an arm, well, you still got 4 other places with small lasers on there. And there's one mounted on the head, meaning that you're always going to have something to shoot at people. Wells really couldn't sell the Charger all that well, and it was sitting in a large inventory in their warehouses. The only people who were really getting them were various mercenary outfits that already existed at the time, some private security firms that went around some restrictions, and various arena fighters because, well, it's a big thing of metal that you can club people over the head with, meaning that it worked really well for that. There was early investment in the design, which brought up a CGR-1A2, released in the early 28th century. This one you probably will not have seen because it really only exists on paper and on historical records, but I've seen people reproduce it over the year. Basically, it's what happens when they get the shipment of the good parts. So they've got ferrofibrous and endo steel to improve the original charger. You save a little bit of weight on the internal structure. You get an extra 14% more armor on the body, but it's a lot harder to repair compared to the original, and it's a lot harder to maintain that endo steel, especially when the endo steel just goes extinct. Most 400 engines of the time were shipping with double heat sinks built in, meaning that you add that also going for you here, meaning that the 5 Magnum Mark II medium lasers that you were equipped with on these bigger boys was actually going to be able to be fired at all times and deal decent amounts of damage. With the rest of the saved weight, the targeting array and the communication system is tied into a Beagle Active Pro, making you an actually decent scout. This is basically the upgrade you can do for a charger without having to change the engine, which is often enough the expensive part. I haven't never seen a stock model of this, but what I have seen, though, is a few chargers coming into the store, and you start disassembling it, and you notice that, there's some endo steel in the chassis that's left over from an old 1A1 and a 1A2 being mixed together. As I said here, those upgraded chargers really did not survive the start of the first succession war, but many of them were rebuilt as the more basic CGR-1A1. That's why, every once in a while you pull one over and you're like, this arm seems awfully light. You start digging in and yeah, that arm's actually made of endo steel. It's just a funny situation that happens every once in a while. For close to 300 years, though, the Charger basically ran around bullying smaller mechs, kicking tanks over, punching walls down, and generally being just massive slabs of steel that you could use to scare civilians. I mean, it's still an 80-ton war machine. It's enough for most situation. As time went on, however, people became more and more desperate from assault mech of just about any kind, and with the Captain Accords going on, well, the Combine, the Confederation, and the League started releasing a few different kits and a few different models that they sold between each other. First in line for these upgrades was the CGR-1L, which came out in 2022, which was less of an upgrade and kind of more of a death sentence to whoever was going to pilot it. 4.5 tons of armor is stripped off, and the small lasers are ripped out and replaced with a right-hand mounted large laser inspired, basically stripped off a Phoenix Hawk. The side torso now mounts a single medium laser for good measure, and nobody outside some people in the Capitol Confederation wanted to pilot this because, they simply had no mechs to really put forward at the time. A lot of those 1L and a few 1A1s, well, a decent number of 1A1s actually, turned into the brand new CGR-1A5 a little bit later on, and this one was decently used during the Fourth Succession War, and in some cases during the War of 3039. The big change on this one is that you downgrade the engine to a Pitman 320, giving you a top speed of 64 kilometers per hour, which is still quite reasonable on an 80-ton battle mech. The armor is reconfigured as well, giving you about 50% more Duralex plate on the machine, making you quite a bit tougher. You get 3 extra heat sinks to keep the whole machine cooler, and we will see why really quickly. The 1A5 is far more of a traditional brawling mech with limited range but extreme firepower. Most of your right torso is now basically a Tomotsuru 20 class autocannon taken off various hunchbacks, with 2 tons of ammo that sits on the other side, giving you a decent amount of engagement time. Backing this up is a pair of 6 tubes of SRM fed by a single ton of reload in the opposite torso, giving you even more firepower. The head still has that small laser, but the center torso now mounts a medium laser, giving you a little bit more punch, at least when the ammo runs out. With the popularity of melee weapons in the late Succession War era, we do have this CGR-1P5 that came out with an axe in the one hand it normally has. Here it does show a big sword here, but the concept remains the same. It's not actually a sword. In terms of damage and in terms of performance, it's closer to a hatchet on this particular model. The rest of the weapon remains more or less the same as the previous model that we just talked about, except that the autocannon is now a 5 class, giving you a little bit of sniping. which is not very useful. It's not super popular. It did make the rounds in various illegal arenas and across the inner sphere and mostly the periphery. It's an okay design, but not one to write home about. Another arena fighter that was quite popular was the Challenger, which is an upgraded version of the Charger, which would gain some popularity and a few copycats over the years. The engine is downgraded to a Pitman 240, giving you a top speed of only 54 kilometers per hour, but the armor is increased to 15.5 tons, meaning that you're going to stay in the field quite some time. Most of the small lasers are now replaced with large lasers, giving you a very nice amount of punch at a very decent range, except for the one in the head, which is actually replaced with a medium laser. To keep shooting everything, you actually have 28 heat sinks to keep the whole thing together. It's quite powerful, it's quite deadly, and there's some clan warriors who met it had no idea what they were actually fighting, thinking they were going to fight a Charger and getting in the face of something that could actually, well, not outrange them, but at least, shoot lasers at the same range as their ER medium lasers. A lot of the Chargers and Charger chassis were actually used in the 3030s to build the new Atamoto series Battletech for the Draconis Combine, but there was another upgrade kit that was available and that was being sold around the different people who had access to Chargers. The CGR-1A5 is a support mech instead of a brawler, with a Pitman 320, giving it a speed of, 64 kilometers per hour and a full set of jump jets, allowing you to go in the air 120 meters. You can get into position to fire a 20 rack of LRM fed by 2 tons of ammo, which is okay, and at closer range you get 4 medium laser and a small laser. All of that is cooled by 22 heat sinks. You've got an okay amount of armor. It's basically a micro archer or a something on the same line as a Cyclops. It's a little bit of an odd duck. It works okay, and I've had good reviews out of them, but some people would prefer something with a little bit more bite. By 3149, they add the new technologies coming in. Well, the old technologies coming back in would be the better way to say it. So the 1A9 being fairly common and fairly popular, well, some people asked for the fancy bits to be put in a new model, leading to the 3K Charger. The armor is replaced with ferrofibrous, giving you a little bit more protection as usual, and the engine is now a full 400 XL for a top speed of 86 kilometers per hour, with an extra jump jet for an extra jump range of 150 meters. This also makes it one of the most expensive mech in that particular era, but let's not get into that. The small laser is peeled off generally for medium lasers, generally those medium pulse lasers, giving you a decent amount of punch at closer range than it should. The 20 rack of LRM is still there, but it's tied to an Artemis guidance system, giving you a little better clustering. These things are quite deadly and quite nasty once you get close enough to them, like a regular Charger. This is another one that the clans had a few issues fighting because they had no idea how to really deal with it until they realized that they just needed to stand a little bit out of the medium pulse laser range, and, well, they didn't have anything to really be a huge threat outside of that 20 rack of LRM that was going to run out of ammo. There are 2 upgrade kits for the 3K series, the first one being a simple C3 version where one of the medium pulse laser is removed, and you replace it with a C3 slave unit and an extra ton of LRM reloads, which is actually quite smart because people knew to just stand a little bit out of the range of it. You will see a few others with tweaks like triple strength Myomer, things like this, which became more popular on later models of the design. The 3KR is an odd rebuild that uses triple strength Myomer and a sword. For laser, you have an ER and a regular small laser, 2 ER medium laser, and a regular medium laser. You also have a snub-nose PPC and a light PPC, giving you more offense at longer range and actually a little bit more generation, which is what you really want on a mech with triple strength Myomer. This is quite deadly and quite nasty, and this one here doesn't have the same issue as the other one with a pitiable range for most of its weapon. The armor is made of 12.5 tons of light ferrofibrous. It's not that great. And you have a targeting computer for all of the light show you're able to do. So shoot everything, eat up enough, then swing the sword, and hope things blow up. It's extensively efficient. It's actually not that expensive. and it works well enough in most situations. Another thing which was decently popular was the 1A5, so Lucian Armor Work decided to sell an upgrade kit in the same kind of line starting in 3063 with the Charger SA5. The engine is now an LTV Light 320, giving you a little bit more weight to play with, tied to a mask, giving you the same technical top speed as the original, but only on short bursts. You got an endo steel chassis and 15.5 tons of plate, so you're decently well protected, and you do save enough weight to put the big guns back on. 3ER medium lasers are mounted in the side torso and the head, and the LB-20X is mounted to replace the regular 20 class autocannon, giving you a little bit more flexibility with 3 tons of reload. The SRM tubes are also moved to the left arm now, and they're equipped with streak technology, giving you a little bit more accuracy. This is another very nasty brawler type charger. The boost in speed thanks to the mask actually makes it quite threatening in short periods, at least to get there, starts shooting at you, and then you try to run away, then it can turn the mask back on and chase you. Overall, this is probably one of my favorite designs. Ravina's electronics license for the Charger had been gotten through various ill-gotten gains and ill-gotten ways, but they concentrated on mainly building 1A9s and 3Ks through most of their history, but they had more chassis available than advanced equipment after a little while. They decided to start selling their own version of a Periphery upgrade kit with the 2A2 a little later on. The easiest thing to acquire is always ferrofibrous and that modern technology Generation 3 kind of equipment. So basically, they have the same kind of protection as a 1A1, but with only 9 tons of ferrofibrous plates rather than the full 10 tons. Where it really differs is the weaponry, where you have a medium laser in the right arm and a grand total of 50 racks of rocket spread throughout the body. One shot is really all that matters for that particular mech because you're going to go in melee. Well, that's what I generally think when I see these things, generally used in arenas. The thought originally was to be it's going to be a scout, so it's going to shoot the rockets as a deterrent to people trying to follow it. But that's not what people do with chargers. They just, get close enough, shoot the rockets, and then go punching and kicking into oblivion. Another group making their own version of the Charger is Sapphire Metal on Shimonita, which bought the old Lucian Armor Work annex in that region and started producing their own version of the Charger with the Charger Kamikaze in 3071. It has 11 ton of light ferrofibrous, giving it more protection than the original, and you've got 12 double heatsinks in an XL320 engine. So you go okay speeds, you dissipate an okay amount of heat, and you've got an okay amount of armor. Outside of that, though, you also have 6 improved jump jet, giving you a full jump range of 180 meters to bring a big sword into play. For more regular weaponry, you got a pair of light PPC and an heavy PPC, giving you actually quite decent medium range, long range firepower and destructive power. To finish this off, you've got a 9-tube or rack of MML with 2 tons of reload, enough for 1 ton of each or whatever you really need it to carry. It's decent enough, it's scary, but I would prefer ground speed over more jump jets, but that's just me. Clan Snowraven and Ravina started building their own chargers to clan spec by 3093, so by the start of the 32nd century, you had a few of those things floating around. It has a massive 400XL engine that's tied to both a mask and a supercharger, giving you a technical top speed of around 140 kilometers per hour. Most people are going to switch one for the other and alternating to get, a good top speed of around 106 kilometers per hour on longer bursts. But I mean, if you need to get somewhere and right in someone's face so you can kick them, punch them, charge them, well, you've got what it takes. To top this off, you got 17.5 tons of ferrolamellar plates on that thing. So to basically go through it, you'll have to shoot it with everything you've got. And for additional protection, it's got an Angel ECM system, probably the best ECM available right now, combined with the Bloodhound Active Probe for scouting. You've got basically the best electronics kit on a single mech. For weapons, it is a little bit limited, but the damage you're going to be able to deal is massive with 4 improved heavy medium lasers and an ER medium laser mounted in the head, all guided by a targeting computer. It's going to be accurate. It's going to deal a decent amount of damage. The ER medium laser basically gives you the same range as a regular large laser. It's going to be able to cut things to shreds and, I mean, get into someone's face, give it a tough kick, and shoot all those lasers and just see people melt away. Over time, really, the modernization of the Charger turned it from something that was more or less a joke to a pretty decent competitor. The 80-ton mech range is one of the weirder ones. You have to find the really good ones and some of the really expensive one to get something that's very, very good. The Charger, just fits in the middle of the pack and is going to do what you want it to do at a price you're wanting to pay, sometimes. Really, the Charger C is about as crazy as it sounds, and I feel that the Combine will probably try something silly in the same vein sooner than later. You'll also have a lot of gargoyle pilots out there that will basically tell you that something that's fast, decently armored is always going to be a threat, even though it doesn't have always all the guns. If you look at the various mechs nowadays, the Charger's not as crazy as it sounds, just because XL engine and in some cases XXL engines make mechs a lot faster, even though they're more fragile. Some people prefer that. Some people don't like that. I'm not the one to pick. I'm the one that fixes the machines. So I thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.